You know, it just really frustrates me because people feel helpless and hopeless, and their doctors tell them that there's nothing that they can do with this condition other than to take a medication. And the medication, levothyroxine, doesn't address all of their symptoms, and they continue to feel unwell. They continue to lose pieces and bits of themselves. Women especially are affected and will put on weight, and then they lose their vitality, they lose their energy, and they see the world around them judging them and thinking that they're lazy, or that there's something wrong with them because, you know, they're sleeping so much, like was in my case, or because they're overweight. And it just really angers me. And then, you know, they're good girls, then they go to their doctor and they ask and they do every single thing their doctor tells them. They say to eat fewer calories, and they eat fewer calories, and these poor women are eating these tiny, tiny salads, and they just keep gaining weight. And you know, year after year, they keep trying and they're doing their best, and it just doesn't get better, and things just keep getting worse for them. They continue losing more and more of their lives. They continue having more and more symptoms, and in some cases, they even progress to additional autoimmune conditions because they just do what they're told, and nobody tells them that they can reverse their conditions. Nobody tells them that they could slow down the progression, and nobody tells them that they can feel so much better and that they could feel like themselves again. It really angers me, really upsets me.
Wow. And do they lose hope?
A lot of them do lose hope. A lot of them do, and for many years they're in a really dark place. They think they can't do anything with their lives because they have brain fog, or because they're always tired, or because they're overweight, and they just lose sight of their dreams. And they just give up on life and say, this is how it is. This is just a part of getting older. This is what happens when you're a mom. You're tired, and you don't want to look at your husband, and all you want to do is just lay around in bed and not do anything in life, not take action, not follow your dreams. They just give up.
Wow. And then these women would have the total recollection of what it was like to be a teenager and to be full of energy, to have a high sexual drive, to be excited and like have a vision and a direction and all those types of things. But like when you don't have the energy to take that on, and those things start to fade away. Do you remember what it was like for you? Like, because you mustn't have lost hope altogether, because if you did, then you wouldn't be here right now. But you did try for a long time doing the wrong things, and your situation did get really bad. And so do you remember what it was like to feel the feeling of starting to lose hope and feel like you were always going to be that way?
Most of my 20s, I slept for most of my 20s. I probably slept for 11, 12, 14 hours each night because I was chronically exhausted. I used to live in Los Angeles, and I wanted to go out dancing with friends and go out on the town, and I was just so tired. I would come home from work and just go to pretty much eat a little bit of food, watch TV, and go to bed, and then be exhausted the next day. And that was my whole entire life, was just going to work, coming home, eating, and going to bed. And I just thought that none of my dreams were possible, that they were silly, that there was no point in doing anything other than just showing up for work and just going with emotions. And I lost so much of myself during that time, and I lost touch with the person I wanted to be. I lost touch with friends and relationships just because I was in a little dark hole of, this is not getting better. I'm just tired all the time. If I go out with friends, I'm going to be exhausted for 5 days after that, so this isn't worth it. I'm just going to stay home and sit in front of my TV.
I have 3 boys. I have twins, and the twins, they're now 12. But when Isaac was, and that's one of my twins, was diagnosed at the age of 2 with something called linear IgA bullous, it sort of changed my whole world. Now, I was already working as a nutritionist, but suddenly to have a personal experience of one where you're seeing someone in so much pain, screaming, because this condition means that they are literally covered in blisters, and particularly blisters around the scrotum. He couldn't sit, he couldn't sleep, and he was 2 years old. So my own experience of seeing my own child literally crying out to me And at that point, we didn't even have a diagnosis. I mean, I had to rush him to hospital because suddenly everyone was absolutely panicking. They didn't know what was happening to him. He was covered in blisters, high temperature. And I remember sitting with the dermatologist at the time, literally flicking through a manual. He didn't know what it was. He was literally flicking through this manual with me. He knew I was a nutritionist. He said, well, I think it's this, I think it's this, I think it's this. That's how rare this condition was. And eventually, after a few days in the hospital, they decided that he had something called IgA linear bullous disease, which is an autoimmune disease. Now, what I haven't mentioned is that I'm celiac, which, as you know, of course, is an autoimmune disease.
Yes.
So for me, it didn't really take much research to start looking at, is there a connection between gluten and this IgA linear bullous? In the meantime, they decided to take him down to Great Ormond Street, which in the UK is one of the leading hospitals for children's health. And they took one look at him. I mean, they actually stripped him off, took photos of all these blisters because they'd never seen something so bad. He was still screaming, he was still in pain constantly, he wouldn't be able to sleep. And they said, well, there's not much we can do about it. He's going to have to take Dapsone, he's going to have to take steroids, he's going to have to take steroid creams. That's it, nothing else. And I was horrified. I mean, almost in tears, to be perfectly honest, because when you're a mother and you are told there is nothing really we can do for your child, he's going to have to just cope with this and take high steroids.
Which we know the side effects of the steroids in the future of taking steroids long term.
Of course, and of course I was well aware of the side effects of all this medication, including antibiotics, was also having on his gut. And being someone that had, you know, myself had to restore my own gut health, knew absolutely the damage that they were potentially going to be causing him. No one was particularly an expert in it anyway. You'd have thought they might explore other avenues as well.
Yes.
When you've got a very young child, and I mean very young child, with the prospect of having to take medication for a very long time, would you want to do that if that was your child?
Yes.
I did actually say that to the consultant, and she said no. And I said, you're telling me you wouldn't even give these medications to your child long term, and yet you're offering this to me? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
And her response?
She said, no, I wouldn't. She wouldn't give those medications to her own child. But she was expecting me to.
My name is Montse. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis 15 years ago when I was 24 years old. The day I was diagnosed, I remember perfectly well because when I saw my blood test results, there were some figures that were extremely high. I was really anxious. So I asked the doctor, what's this, please? And she replied to me, look, you have an illness, an autoimmune condition. It's chronic and it's progressive. It's not very important what you can do, you just need to take the pill. So I was put on hormone replacement of thyroid hormones, and that was all. At that time, I weighed 20 kilos more, I was really exhausted, I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate. It was really hard for me to go to work, to wake up every morning. It was really a rough time. And by the end of the day, I was feeling really, really exhausted. But at the same time, it was really difficult to fall asleep and to keep asleep. So I started to investigate other ways. I started with several different therapies. I was quite frustrated because most of them didn't work. And what changed was 5 years ago, I started to investigate more on food and how food affects the way I feel, and how food affects my condition. I discovered paleo. I discovered Tom O'Brien in the Gluten Summit, and then it was like a click. It was like, okay, now I understand. I can start to put together the different pieces and to see that the problem is not this part of my body, but it's the whole body, that it's completely altered. My immune system is not working properly, so that's what I have to correct. Not only take hormones to replace my thyroid that's not working properly. At that moment, my feeling was, okay, so there is hope. Because before, there is no hope. The only hope was, okay, this is what it is, and it just may get a little bit better some days, or it may get really worse. So for me, it was very important to understand what was behind what was happening, and what were the foods that were perpetuating that state of inflammation. And once I started to change things, I lost a lot of weight, I started to feel more energetic, I could sleep better, and I even changed my profession. So I quit my last job and I started to work as a dietist to help people that, like me, are suffering this illness, and to give them a little bit of hope and ideas on how to improve.
What's it like to have been able to turn it all around and to make it mean something?
You know, it's just been a gift. It's been amazing to be able to be where I was and turn it around and make up for lost time and actually follow my dreams and do the things I want to do and help people recover their health. It's every success story I get from a reader or from somebody that I've worked with is just, I get tears in my eyes because I know this one person is going to get their life back. And that's just how it works. Once we get our health back, we can start dreaming again. We can start making a difference in the world. And I hope to be able to give that to people just by giving them little strategies and solutions they can help to feel a little bit better tomorrow and keep going.
You and I discussed some of that with Michael. You and he are a great team. Like you get excited, you dream, you vision, you joke together, you get mad at each other. You know, which is great.
Part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's healthy. You know, you guys have a great relationship, and you're inspiring, exciting to work with, and like I can feel that energy, and but he's been on the other side of that journey too, and it obviously wasn't easy for him. He probably tried to make it out at times like it was, like he would just be trying to be the rock, because I can see that in his personality. But I think that there was probably some times when he actually felt like, man, what's going on here, and started to doubt himself, or do you remember that?
Yeah, right after we first got married, Michael built this bed for us, and I couldn't sleep in the bed because I was allergic to it. And I would have coughing fits every night while I was trying to sleep in the bed. So for the first few months of our marriage, I had to sleep on the couch because I couldn't tolerate the bed. And I also had such bad acid reflux that it kept me and my husband awake for most of the night, because I would just start coughing in the middle of the night. And a lot of my symptoms started in my mid-20s after I got married. I just started having more and more symptoms, and he was sort of like, okay, well, we got married and all of a sudden you started falling apart. What happened? What's going on with you? And that was really hard for me to hear, because I was supposed to be in my prime, and it's like all downhill from here, and it was just really declining at a rapid rate where I was tired when we got married, but all of a sudden I was sleeping the whole day. I was going with him to bed at 9 o'clock at night. He was waking up for work at 3 or 4 in the morning. I was waking up at 9. And I remember there were just days where he'd be working all day and he'd come home, and I had just been resting the whole day, and he'd have to cook for me, and I just felt worthless because I felt like I really wasn't contributing anything to society, our relationship, and I'd always been kind of a go-getter, and it was like very, very hard for me to go through that, to see just all of these things being taken from me, that I couldn't even sleep on a bed, and I couldn't even sleep at night because I was constantly coughing. And then I developed carpal tunnel in both of my arms. I used to visit people with disabilities in their homes to help to optimize their medications, oftentimes taking them off of medications so they'd have a better life. And part of that was writing a lot of reports, and I loved my job, I loved visiting with my clients, but the carpal tunnel prevented me from doing these reports because my arms hurt so badly whenever I had to write, and it was just constantly, every month I started getting new symptoms. So I started getting joint pains and allergies, and it was like really my body was just breaking itself apart.
Wow. And I really appreciate you sharing some of these things, isn't it? It's just we're grateful to have people that are willing to go there, because so many people are silently suffering, and unless we say, hey, we've been there, and this sort of, it's like so many people would just prefer to just try and erase that or not let people know about that, and you unfolding, it's just so helpful, and it's releases a lot of people. And I know what you're talking about when it comes to some of those things and how the health affects relationship. You know, Laurie and I we've experienced that, and yeah, you felt like you failed Michael, didn't you? You felt like you failed him.
I felt like I was failing my husband and my parents, who worked so hard to get me to the United States so that I can have a better life, and I felt like I wasn't living up to that because I had brain fog, because I was tired all the time, and so I couldn't do the things I wanted to do in life.
That put a lot of pressure on you, feeling like you failed those people, didn't it?
It did, and it was, I didn't look sick. So nobody thought there was anything wrong with me because I looked healthy. And I remember when I first got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I came home and I told Michael, and I was devastated and I was crying, that I had Hashimoto's, an autoimmune condition. And he said, but you don't look sick. You look just fine to me. They must be wrong. And I was like, no, they're not. And this is what I've been feeling. But it felt like nobody really believed me. I remember people would tease me because I was always sleeping. And they thought, I was just lazy, or there was something wrong with me because I was forgetting things. They thought, I was an airhead because I couldn't remember something from a previous day. And that was just, they really hurt, and it really made me feel bad about myself.
Now, the moment when you realized, and you fully in your heart, you accepted, I have a condition, and more so than when you worked out, hey, look, I can actually solve this, and then when you came to that point, well, I want to know what it was like for you to actually work out, this is not just in my head, this is a condition. When you accepted it fully, and did you feel validated?
Yeah, when I first got diagnosed, I finally felt validated after almost a decade of being told that there was nothing wrong with me, because I was going to different doctors and they were saying, well, you're not anemic, you're not this, you're not that, so maybe you're depressed, we can give you antidepressants. And I was like, I don't know, I don't feel unhappy. I feel, fine. I'm just tired all the time. And so it was nice to finally get an answer for what I was going through. It felt good, but at the same time, it was bittersweet because, part of you feels validated, but another part of you feels like, oh wow, there really is something wrong. It's not just in my head.
So I have thyroid disease, and it's totally managed, but the first time I noticed I had a problem, I started losing the outer third of my eyebrows, and I was cold and constipated. I immediately knew what was going on because I've been teaching this for years, and so I went, and my diet wasn't the issue, right? Because I've kept my diet totally clean. I had to go on thyroid supplements, but I also went and looked at iron, because one of the key things that happens when you have thyroid issues is you have low iron. And I actually had to get shots of iron to get my iron levels back up, and now I make sure that I eat an iron-rich diet with a lot of vitamin C to help me absorb the iron better than I am eating from the meat that I'm eating. You know, it's so great that we have things like that we care about, like our hair and our weight. I mean, because these things have been going on. It's not like one day you wake up and this happens. These things happen over time, not overnight. But what we're aware of is our outer appearance. And so with a woman, if she starts gaining weight or losing her hair, she's going to take notice and she'll do something about it. So in a way, they're awful things, but they're fantastic because they're the way your body can tell you something's up that you can do something about.
I was diagnosed in April 2014, but prior to that, I'd been going through approximately 3 to 4 years of being treated for what was classed at the time as sports-related injuries. I've always been very athletic, so I've been into cycling, running, swimming for my entire life.
Sounds like a triathlete.
I was working my ways towards being a triathlete. I'd never put the three together.
Yes.
So, yes, I would love to get to that position where I could do that triathlon. But I'd been treated for 3 to 4 years, various different treatments. So I'd been to physiotherapy, was given so many different exercises to carry out in an attempt to get me back to running. I've had cortisone injections, far too many of them and whilst I got better or seemed to be better for a while, there was always a time where something would happen that would almost set me back, and it would set me back to where I was, back at the start of, right, what is it that is causing this issue? Because this had been going on for 2-3 years, that I just wanted to go to the hospital one day, just be taken in the morning, have a battery of tests thrown at me, so that by the end of the day I could walk out and go, that's what it is.
This is the problem, now let's fix it.
This is the problem, now let's fix it. And I actually did. One of my doctors had said, look, if there is a problem, go to A&E one morning, just try and get it resolved. And I did. A&E did what they do for accident and emergency, and it's not an emergency.
Go where to it? Oh,
To accident and emergency, so it was...
Emergency room at the hospital.
Yes.
I see.
And they said, it's not an emergency, you can still do everything, so go away. And I was just almost wanting to pull my hair out. It's just like, how much longer do I need to carry on without getting an answer? How much longer can it possibly take to really get a proper diagnosis of whatever I've got? Because I wanted to be able to do what I was doing. I wanted to get to a period of time where I could be doing the sports that I wanted to do without thinking something's going to go wrong.
Yes.
And again, so I started going back to doing the exercises I'd been given by the physio. And then 4 months later, saw another consultant who said, yeah, I can see that you've got a problem, but I think you've also got another problem, and I'm going to refer you to a neurologist. And it was at that stage where just the word, I'm going to send you to a neurologist, it was like, well, that doesn't sound so good. Without really fully understanding what a neurologist really is looking at. That's when I started the research into, well, what is this neurologist going to be looking at that when I go to see them, that they might be giving me the information for. So I started looking at all the different illnesses and diseases that neurologists look at, and I went from A to Z. And my friend at the time, in between whilst I was seeing the neurologist, that had the MRI scans, and I was waiting for the results, and she said to me, so what in your mind is worst case scenario? And I said, well, having read through what they're looking at, probably for me, I really don't want them to turn around and say you've got MS. It wasn't worst case scenario. I now know that because I know more about the disease itself. So there are lots more things that could be worse. And I still recall the day where she said to me, we've gone through all the tests, we've looked at the scans, and it's MS. I actually felt a whole weight of relief lifted off of my shoulders.
Now you knew.
Because now I had a definitive answer as to what was causing all of the issues I was having, and it meant I could now figure out what I needed to do to move on.
My name is Xavi, and I just can remember when I was diagnosed psoriasis, which is my autoimmune disease. It's always been with me, and for me the manifestation of the disease is like I have some rashes on the lower limbs and on my arms, and also my scalp and everything. Almost it's all over my body, my complete body. Although I don't remember when I was diagnosed, I just remember always going to different doctors, like trying to find solutions for my problem, and they just didn't provide it. Always same answers, like take this cream with this corticoids or whatever, or have this kind of shampoo, but no actual solution like for my problem. And I also remember one moment, I think it was like 10 or 12, and I just talked to my parents and my dad, and I asked, Daddy, when I'm going to get rid of this? Is going to disappear when I'm older? And he told me, like, super sincere, he told me, son, this is going to be with you forever. And I couldn't stand that, and just went down in tears, and I was crying the whole night on my room. So then you find a spot when you get older, and that you have to take like the control of your health, and you have to do things for yourself because nobody else is going to do them for you. So then I started like finding alternatives. I'm an engineer, and I'm super structured, and I always think that there's a solution for a problem. So I just started digging on the internet, trying to find a solution for my problem. And then you find that there are people like you that also have an autoimmune condition, because that's what psoriasis is. It's not a skin condition, it's an autoimmune condition. And that you can control it, you can improve it, you can get much better by taking the right decisions. And also for me, it was kind of embarrassing being, I mean, kids are tough when you're young, because for a guy like me, having those skin rashes, and they look like weird for them. It's not the question was always not in a kind way. I mean, it's not like hey, what's wrong with you? What problem do you have? Can I help you? It's like a weird look, like they felt like it was icky or something, or disgusting. And I have problems with my confidence and having like wearing shorts in summer or a t-shirt because there's the exposure to other people. I think I was not that confident because of the problem I had. And then you grow old, and then you know that you have to find solutions for yourself. And I found that having like diet changes and controlling your stress management, like meditation or doing sport on all that stuff, they really helped my condition altogether. I thought that something has to be wrong rather than take this cream forever. I mean, I had to find the root cause of the disease. It should be something that is going wrong inside of me that should be fixed. Also, the thing that drove me also to get control over my health is that I also had things that, although everyone says that they're normal, like normal things, I thought that they also had something to do with my problem. I also had asthma, and I also have problems with my knee, always inflamed. So I think there were more than things that were like connected.
And you know, I look at Isaac now, he's a 12-year-old, full of life, full of zest. And a lot of people say to me, because I see a lot of children, but isn't it cruel to take out gluten and dairy and, you know, go more paleo? Aren't they missing out? No, they're not missing out because they know good health. And I say to all my children, because we're all gluten-free, it's because I love you that I want to nourish you with the foods that will nurture your body and make it grow and develop. If I didn't love you, I'd take you down to some rubbishy junk food place. But I love you.
Yeah.
Why would I want to give food that is inflammatory, that is damaging, that is poison to you? That's not a sign of love.
Yes. Yes.
And then you obviously had to deal then with the challenges of, am I going to be able to fall pregnant? That was probably a big one that would have come up for you.
Yeah, infertility is such a big thing with women with thyroid disease. And as a newlywed, that was really hard to hear for me because I had just gotten married, and here I was told that I had this condition that would have reduced my chances of becoming pregnant, that would increase my chances of having miscarriages, and increase my chances of having children with potential birth defects and birth abnormalities. And nobody wants to hear that, especially not a newlywed who's really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about the future. So that was very, very devastating for me.
And then all this pain, you know, and all this confusion, disillusionment, the most amazing part of this story is that then it became your fuel. Like, I mean, you're a New York Times best-selling author, and that all your pain poured into these pages and poured into this movement, this mission that has impacted hundreds of thousands of people, and it's about to touch millions. How did that pain propel you to this mission that you're on now to help end this disease for people?
You know, at the time when I was diagnosed, I was working with people who were disabled and who were not able to voice what was going on with them. And so I was doing a lot of research on their behalf. They had a lot of rare disorders and looking for solutions for them because there were none in the standard of care. And I decided to take that same approach with myself and with Hashimoto's, and thought, you know what, maybe they don't know everything. Maybe there's more information out there. Maybe there are things I can try, and what's the pain, what's the hurt in trying? And then I started trying these things and I started getting better. My acid reflux went away within 3 days on a gluten-free and dairy-free diet. I had it for 3 years. 3 years I was coughing and vomiting and waking up in the middle of the night to cough. And that was gone in 3 days with just a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And at that point I was like, you know what, I can't keep this to myself. I need to get this out there to all of the other people that are suffering in silence. I need to be an advocate for them. As a pharmacist, I have a good background where people know that and trust pharmacists, so I can get this message out there. I'm not a crazy person. I have been there myself, and this stuff works. So I hope that people listening on the other end that are suffering in silence know that there's a way out and there's a way to get better, and you know what, that you're really worth it. That you need to invest in yourself, and you really are worth it, and you deserve to feel good, and you deserve to be happy.
That's excellent. And then finally feeling better for you, like that is, feeling better, and obviously you got the test done, and I'd like to hear about that. I want to hear about the day when you got the papers back showing that your numbers were normal, or I would love to hear how you would explain that. And then what was that like? Tell me the joy of and then obviously both the symptoms, the lifestyle. You talked about how much the relationship was under pressure, what opened up there, and then obviously Michael would start getting more of what he wants in the relationship, and that would have felt great to be able to give your husband what he was looking for in the relationship and all that. So just tell me about all that.
You know, my healing didn't take overnight, so I didn't develop the condition overnight. And my healing took time and gradual steps. So I ended up starting off with thyroid antibodies in the 2000 range, and as I started to make a ton of symptoms, probably a list of 20 symptoms. And as I started making changes, it was nice to see some of those symptoms disappear. So all of a sudden, the acid reflux was the first thing to go, and it hasn't come back since. I'm very, very happy about that. And everything just started melting away. Within 3 to 6 months, my hair loss stopped, and I started to have hair again. I lost a third of my hair at one point. My joint pains went away within 2 to 3 months. And it was amazing just to peel back the symptoms. Every time I would go, my thyroid antibodies would drop lower and lower. And it's nice to be able to actually wake up in the morning and not sleep for 12 hours. It's nice to be able to remember things. It's nice to be able to have the energy to pursue my passions. I can go out with friends for a few weeks at a time and not feel exhausted and not be bedridden. And so it's just such a blessing to be able to do everything that I want to do without feeling like I need to account for this elephant in the room, which is a chronic disease that follows me and drags me down all the time. So it's just, it's hard to find the words to explain how amazing it feels to have my freedom back and how good I feel nowadays.
That's awesome. And then I know that you had a problem with word finding. Could you tell me what kinds of things would you forget? And then you went on to, did you have that book ghostwritten, or did you actually write it? And so tell me. Yeah.
I used to have quite a problem with words and brain fog and word finding. I remember just being in meetings and trying to think of something smart to say, and I was never able to do that at work because I would be intimidated, or if I did say something, I'd forget what I was saying mid-sentence. And even simple words like, that animal with the whiskers and, oh yeah, cat. And so that was just kind of devastating, and I thought there was something seriously wrong with me. And, I've been able to do hundreds of interviews now, and most of the time I find my words without a problem. I was able to write a book that was over 400 pages long, and I wrote every word of it. So it's not a problem for me anymore. It's nice to be able to have my voice back. It's nice to be able to have my confidence back and just put myself out there in the world without really worrying about forgetting everything.
Since I started my changes on my diet, on my stress management and everything, no knee pain, no asthma breakouts, and my skin is much better. So yeah, that definitely connected for me. When I began addressing my inflammatory problems with diet, for example, I found, although I thought it was normal having like digestive issues, like not going properly to the bathroom, so to speak, being one day constipated, another day like lose a stool or whatever. I got rid of them like super quick. It was something like weeks or months, not much more. And that always had been with me, and I thought it was completely normal because other people, they do have it. So for me it was normal, and was one of the major improvements I found. And also when I had like dust exposure, because I'm allergic to dust, so that is when I had asthma breakouts, big asthma breakouts. I must have my room completely cleaned every day. Otherwise I would have some kind of breakout. And since I started eating correctly and anti-inflammatory diet, I got rid of those asthma breakouts. So I could, for me it was not that easy. I could sleep an entire night, which lots of nights it was like I couldn't sleep, I couldn't breathe. It was very frustrating. And also taking corticoids as a solution, not addressing the root cause of the problem. So those were the first aspects that improved, but not only. After following a strict anti-inflammatory diet for more months, plus sun exposure in summer, my skin got better than ever. So So yeah, for me it was like the beginning of a new lifestyle, but also the beginning of a path to health, as I described it.
So what got me interested in all of this stuff early on, I was a ballet dancer, which is ridiculous at 6 feet tall. And so I was very concerned about being super svelte, but the bigger issue for me was I had cystic acne. I grew up with cystic acne. I battled acne all the way up until about 35 years old when I discovered that dairy and gluten caused acne, right? Especially dairy. And the minute I pulled that out, literally this problem I had struggled with for 20 plus years went away in a matter of days. So in a way I was super happy and super angry all at the same time. But I have seen amazing things happen with psoriasis, eczema, rosacea, acne with dietary shifts and the right types of fats. So the big things that helped me were pulling out. Dairy was the #1 trigger for that, making sure that I had really good essential fatty acids, especially GLA, and making sure that I was digesting those fats well too. I've been on Accutane, I've been on you name a medication or topical or internal, and I've done it. Accutane is one of the most severe things that you can use. I went on 3 rounds of it. I've done everything. I've spent thousands of dollars. I went to all the top experts, all the celebrity doctors in Beverly Hills. If it was there, I did. I did the blue lights, everything you could think of. Nothing ever really worked. And I was always a fitness trainer, and it was embarrassing to be out running around, and I'd be running into bathrooms trying to cover this whole thing up. And I would literally, I remember my first wedding, like waking up in the morning and having a breakout and being so upset. It literally governed my life. I can only imagine what it must be like if you had eczema or psoriasis. But again, I've seen these things turn around when people pull out dairy, gluten, eggs. Eggs especially can be a big trigger for skin issues, and then adding in the right types of fats, and of course, lowering sugar impact. Sugar's never going to be a good trigger for food. It's one of the first pictures I show when I do talks is a picture of me in a horsey shirt, really bad glasses, and a big zit on my chin. Because that's how I started junior high, and that kept going until literally my late 30s when I stumbled upon all this stuff. I found it really trying to figure out what was getting in the way of people losing weight, and I was always looking for things with skin. I would go to the doctors, they go, diet has nothing to do with this. Back then they thought maybe it was chocolate. That was the extent of it, but they really never thought it was diet, and I was hooked on dairy. It was my favorite food. Frozen yogurt was like my favorite food on the planet. So the minute I pulled that out, because it's just yogurt, right? It's like the most terrible crap there is. So, I pulled all that stuff out and changed overnight.
Well, I've got multiple sclerosis, and I was diagnosed in 2000. I was very ill after my mother had a heart attack, and that was my trigger. And once we knew that I had MS, we could track it back, all the different events that had happened to me since I was around 13, that they were relapses. Things would happen, things would go numb, I'd lose the use of something, and then after a few weeks it had gone. So I never went to the doctors, I didn't see there was a problem. It was just like they were all, in my mind, isolated incidences. It wasn't until you get all the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and you can then see what the full picture is. In October 2003, I was in a really not a good place. And at that point, just to give you an idea of what I was living with my MS, cognitively it was as though English was my second language. I couldn't recall vocabulary. I would put a sentence together in my mind because I knew that what came out of my mouth people couldn't understand. And it would make sense to me, but everybody would give me that look like somebody who's had a stroke. It's really difficult to work out what it is they have said. And I had to speak slowly, so I was slurring my words but trying to talk ultra clear, but it was very slow because I was trying to make an effort with every word that I said. So I would perhaps call a cat a dog, but I would think I'd said the right word. And every time I spoke, my husband corrected me. I would say, can I have a cup of tea? I don't drink tea, I only drink coffee. So he'd say, don't you mean coffee? Yes, but you know, didn't I say coffee? No. Well, that was so depressing, because every time you say something, somebody tell you, you're wrong, you know, you're wrong. No, don't do it, don't correct me, because I'm finding it really upsetting. And he thought by correcting me that I would remember the next time. But it didn't work that way. So that was the problem I'd had cognitively, and I really thought I was getting Alzheimer's or something. And the only thing that I'd ever when we were first married, and I felt that I was losing my memories. And the left side of my body was numb with pins and needles. Exactly half my body. Half my forehead, my nose, my tongue, my cheek was numb with pins and needles. And it was very, very painful. It felt similar to when you've had an injection to have a filling at the dentist when it's wearing off. It was that kind of pain, and I couldn't bear anything touching me because it was so painful. And the hearing in my left ear went completely. There was no hearing there at all. I had double vision, so everything was very, very hard to see. I used to wear a patch over one eye so I could see. Both eyes worked, but just not together. I had bowel and bladder problems, problems as in no control at all. I was choking on my food. I had very bad vertigo. I had no balance. The strength in my left leg would just, I could be standing and then it would just go, like turning off an electric light switch. The strength would go. So I fell on the floor an awful lot, either through the vertigo, the no balance, or the leg. And I was furniture walking and had to use a wheelchair. I had restless legs, so at night it was awful. My legs would thrash around, and to get out to go to the toilet, which I used to go to regularly, if I woke up, if I tried to stand up, my legs were like elastic bands. I would bob up and down until I fell over because my legs wouldn't hold me. So I used to have to stretch my legs and wake my legs up, that's how I called it, before I could stand. If not, it wouldn't hold my weight. So at that time, my parents would look at me and say, if only we could have it instead of you, if we could, you know, take it away from you. Friends were embarrassed because they didn't know what to say to me. It was so difficult. And I thought, if I took the painkillers and ended it, that everybody would understand. I was stopping everybody else from having a normal life. When you have somebody in the family who is sick, it doesn't just affect that person. It affects the whole family. And I didn't want to mess up everybody else's life. I thought if I ended mine, that everybody else would be able to carry on and they would understand. But the only thing that stopped me from doing that was my 15-year-old daughter would have found me And I couldn't have put her through that. So the only option was to fight it, to do something, to try and get my life back. And that's what led me to look for LDN. It took 18 months to get back to a really good state of health. Very slowly, the bowel and bladder problems resolved, the twitching muscles, the burning limbs, the restless legs. It was not overnight. It was slowly, but as I became stronger, different things just disappeared, you know, that were problems. And it's very easy when you're going downhill. And my mother used to say to me, she was praying that one day I was going to say I felt better, but when I was going downhill, how are you today? And that was depressing, because it was like, oh, I can't stand now, or I lost my bladder control. Going down, you know, mentioning it. But when you start getting better, it's so strange the way your mind accepts that you can do something now, and you've forgotten how many things you can do that you couldn't do until somebody makes you recall what it was you couldn't do, and you think, well, how long have I been able to do that? And it's hard to remember. So it was, as I say, it was December 2003 when I started LDN, and I started the LDN Research Trust in the following November. What did I want to do with the knowledge that I had learned? Did I want to carry on with my life and say I'm okay? Or did I want to help those people that were in that deep, dark place that I was in, that had been told there's nothing more that can be done? And I wanted to tell people, I wanted to stand on the rooftops and say, you know, okay, it's not a miracle drug or a cure, and it might not work for you, but look into it, investigate, do your research, see if it would do anything for you.
So are you telling me that people can get better?
Yes, people can get better. People with autoimmune diseases can get better. We certainly can arrest the development of most autoimmune diseases, if not reverse them. We can stop them in their tracks many, many, many times. And usually, I can't think of more than 2 cases where people haven't gotten better to the point where their symptoms are minimal to non-existent. Almost all cases that I've seen clinically, if you take the big picture overview, people get better. Rheumatoid, psoriasis, vitiligo, lupus, multiple sclerosis, they get better. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
A 29-year-old woman, international model, very stressful life being a model, and they tend not to take very good care of themselves, right? Mm-hmm. She developed an autoimmune disease called systemic lupus erythematosus. Within 2 years, she was 5'10". Within 2 years, she was 5'2". She lost 8 inches of height from the steroids. The heavy steroids that they had put her on caused osteoporosis, and the bones in her back broke and her spine collapsed. She lost 8 inches of height within two and a half years. She died twice on the table in the hospital from the chemo and all of the drugs they were giving her, trying to suppress the immune system, trying to just calm this thing down. She died twice on the table. She starts implementing a functional medicine approach, looking for the underlying triggers like food sensitivities, environmental exposures, emotional stress. And as she addressed those things, she started feeling better, to the point to where she put the entire disease in remission. No evidence, no elevated antibodies, no evidence at all. Took about 3 years to do that.
And what did her life look like?
Her life changed completely from being unable to survive and making peace with her maker. She got a boyfriend, and she was going out living a regular life, and she got a job, and she was making a valuable contribution in the work she was doing, and she was happy and vibrant, and no one could argue with her about the topic of environmental exposures triggering autoimmune disease. She was a walking example. When she learned what those were and got those triggers out of her life, she got better.
Awesome, man. And what happened to her height?
She had gained 2.5 inches of height back about 9 months ago. Haven't checked since.
That's awesome. And considering that she had made that, it sounds like she's kind of slowly inching, you know, back
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Slowly getting stronger every day.
That's awesome.
We need to save the planet. This will help. More than a little bit. This will help. We can only do it together.